Well, welcome. How has your weekend been so far?
Well, I just got here late last night, which is why I was kind of late getting to the table, because I finished a film in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, at 8:30 yesterday morning after shooting all night, and then got on a plane, the first of two planes. The second flight was delayed in Houston, so I got here another hour and a half later. So, I didn't go to bed till like 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So.
You're a rock star. Well, thank
I don't know
you.
about that, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you. So one of the first things I wanted to ask you is obviously, Kane, you're a legend as Jason, and one of the things that I think is so fascinating is that you wear a mask, yet we can completely feel every emotion that you feel as Jason. And I wanted to know how difficult it was to have to emote so much, but also have to wear a mask.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've said it in quite a few interviews that it's very hard to look scary and act scary and look intimidating and stuff without your facial expressions or your voice. So I took that as a challenge and practiced before we started shooting part 7, practiced in the mirror, and I tried to see what I could do that would look scary, considering I can't use those two things. So I just practiced and, came up with some of the stance and the breathing stuff, and fortunately it worked. And I think it looks natural. I mean, a lot of guys that played the character and play characters like this tend to overact, I think, and it's not convincing. So my whole goal was to make it look scary, but don't make the audience think I was trying to be scary. Which is why people now come up and say, hey, can you do the Jason walk? And I was like, well, that's kind of how I walk. So that's why it looks natural, because I just walked that way anyway. But so it didn't look like I was trying to put on anything.
Well, you definitely scared the heck out of me, so thank you for that.
Oh, I'm happy to do so. I'll probably do it again before I leave this room. Scare the hell out of you.
It would be an honor. And I also wanted to know, what notes were you given when you did take on the role of Jason? Maybe that varied from actors that played the role previously.
Well, I mean, I wasn't, fortunately, in my case, I wasn't told by anyone how to play the character or given any ideas by any of the previous guys, because my thinking was, wait a minute, you're going to tell me how to be Jason? You were never the character more than once. You were replaced in the next film, so I didn't think any previous Jason had ever done a good enough job to warrant giving advice. And I wasn't convinced I would do it more than once. That's why if you ever see an autograph of mine that says Kane Hodder, Jason number 7, that's how I used to sign after part 7 came out, until I did part 8. Then I dropped that, because then I was like, okay, now I'm playing another one, so I don't have to put number 7 anymore. But I wasn't so confident that I would repeat in the role. Nobody had in the past, so why would I think I would? And John Buechler, who was the reason I played Jason, basically gave me free rein as to how to make the character mine, and didn't really make any suggestions. The only suggestions he had for me was when we were on the set, he might have a suggestion on, because of this camera angle, for instance, if you did this, it might look a little better. But in general, he or no one else really tried to tell me how to play the character, which is nice if you're trying to develop your own style of it,
I love the fact that they gave you free reign, and it definitely shows, and that's why I think that you're the standout Jason, right? I mean, I think we would all agree that you're it.
Thank you. I don't think anybody ever enjoyed it as much as me, but, maybe that's incorrect. But I just loved playing the character. And I've said recently in interviews, and I know people are going to roll their eyes when I say it, but I feel like I was born to play that character. It just always felt so natural for me to be, twisting people's heads off and beating them with their own arms and stuff like that.
And I've read in a couple interviews about your favorite kill as Jason, which was, is it the sleeping bag? Is that
Correct.
I just want to note that Hatchet I am obsessed with. And you have a scene with, is it Tony Todd? And you just like rip his body out of his body? Have you guys seen that kill? It is...
Yeah, I kind of cut him in half and then hold up his skinned upper torso. That's the fun with the Hatchet movies, is that I have killed people that play other horror characters. Almost every other horror character you can name, I have killed a person that played that character. I killed a Jason, that was, Derek Mears. A Leatherface, R.A. Mihailoff. Freddy I killed. Tony Todd. Michael Myers, Tyler Mane. So it's kind of cool. I don't think there's any other character that has killed actors that played other famous characters. And I'm sorry if I'm boring you guys and you're walking out on me, but go ahead. Don't worry. I'm not offended.
Do you have a favorite kill from Hatchet?
Oh, yes, of course I do. Ripping Mrs. Permadio's head apart by her jaw. It's pretty hard. I mean, it's not as easy to do as you would think either.
No.
And the scene is great because you don't see the edit. You don't see where they cut from the actress to the prosthetic head. It's very well hidden. And so it's more of a shock when you see me pull her head apart.
Yay. So obviously, you really give back to your fans, and you love to do these conventions, and I think that is so wonderful. And I want to know, what is the craziest thing that you've ever had to sign for a fan?
Probably, I mean, it really isn't crazy, but it's unusual. I have twice now signed the remains of a loved one from cremation. Yeah, an urn of someone's, they call it ashes, but it really isn't ashes. But, that's kind of interesting that somebody will ask me to sign their dead relative who was a big fan. And, I'll pretty much sign anything, I guess.
All right. Challenge accepted.
Body parts, living on people's
Bodies forever.
on their bodies, yeah.
That's commitment. All right, so before we open this up to questions from the audience, because we do have a microphone, and whatever questions you have for Kane Hodder, I don't think anything's off limits here today.
Doesn't sound like it is anyway.
So obviously, Jason, really had an impact on a lot of us. He scared the hell out of me. I want to know, when you were growing up, what really scared the hell out of you?
That's a tough one because I'm a stunt person, so I've been so for 42 years. So most of the typical stuff that might frighten people doesn't frighten me because, heights and that kind of thing, and no animals do. And I always find it fun when I'm at a convention where, I don't know if anyone here has any creatures, but a lot of conventions have creatures like snakes and tarantulas and stuff like that, actual living creatures. And I like to take them around to the other actors, in particular to the ones that think they're tough guys, and see if they'll let me put a live tarantula on their head and stuff. And it's pretty comical to see how people react to that kind of stuff. So nothing really scares me, but, I again, recently have come up with a real answer if you want something that's not fun and is actually true. The one thing that is frightening to me is dementia. And to imagine that you can go from a person who is one way and not be able to recognize your immediate family members, that's terrifying to me. So, like I said, it's not a fun answer, and like saying heights or water or sharks or something, but that's the only thing that's pretty scary to me. And you guys know that I got burned doing a fire stunt way back, and you would think maybe I'd be a little maybe wary at least of fire, but really it doesn't bother me. I've done many fire stunts since then, so it just there's nothing really that scares me. The one movie, if you think about scary movies that had an effect on me, was The Exorcist when it first came out. That was such an amazing film, still is, really. This many years later, still a really good film. And how many other films can you think from 1974 aren't laughable now, especially scary films? Definitely. And it's still, it still holds up. So when you saw that movie in theaters, it was such an amazing thing to experience because you were scared before you ever went in the theater. So many things on the news about people getting possessed while they're watching it. And these are all stories that people were convinced were happening. So you were like very nervous. I mean, it certainly doesn't have the impact now, but it's still a good movie.
All right. So if it's okay with you, we're going to take some questions from the audience. If we have any willing victims. All right. You guys can just form a line. The microphone's right behind you. What's your name?
My name's William Davis. I read your book and I thought it was amazing. One of my favorite parts was when you were talking about pranking those kids that came and saw you sleeping, like you were playing Jason. Is there any other good prank stories you have like that?
Oh, I'm pulling pranks all the time on people. It's something that I find necessary when I'm on the set in a big makeup like that it gets very tedious and gets very exhausting and you get tired of it. So I just do that kind of stuff to entertain myself. And, whether it be pretending to be a Jason dummy on the set and then scaring the hell out of somebody or, you name it, I've pretty much done it. And again, it mainly is just to entertain myself so I don't get cranky. Because, you don't want to be going into a scene as an actor who's going to get killed by Jason, for instance. The last thing you want to do is go into that scene thinking that guy that's playing Jason is kind of fucked up in the head. So that's why I do stuff when on the set where they might be watching me and they think I don't know they're watching me, but of course I do. So before the killing scene, I'll go over and start banging my head against a wall or something and screaming. And they're like, oh, no, wait a minute. He's going to grab me by the neck and twist me around, and he's banging his head on the wall. So it's just, again, for my own entertainment, might help their performance, but there's, a lot of fun things to do on the set.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi.
Hello.
I have read that you are a part of a Hollywood ghost hunters group, and I was wondering what paranormal experiences you have had.
So, yes, I do have a ghost hunting group called Hollywood Ghost Hunters. I formed it with my buddy Rick, who's also a stuntman, who has been in so many movies with me, and he was actually the only other person to be Victor Crowley in the Hatchet movie when I was Mr. Crowley, Victor's father in flashbacks. Then Rick was Victor. But we've been all over the world and done, official ghost hunts, and I'm very interested in that, the idea of the paranormal world existing, but at the same time, I'm very careful to not let my imagination go. If something minor happens, I feel like some people just exaggerate the hell out of it, even inadvertently, just to have a story. Everybody wants to have a ghost story that they've experienced. So I've had a couple things happen, but nothing that I could definitely say was paranormal. It might have been, but there's also a chance that it may have been something just naturally occurring that was kind of coincidental or something. So, you probably heard me say it before, but I classify myself as an open-minded skeptic. I think a lot of stories that people have are kind of exaggerated and manufactured possibly, but I'm also open-minded enough to think it could exist. So I'm hoping.
One day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello. So obviously you're a great stunt person, but I also think you're a great regular actor. Do you have any more plans to do more dramatic roles like Thomas Crowley in the future? Because when you cried in Hatchet, I cried.
Oh. Actually, that's what I've been doing mostly lately, is more, dramatic type roles. The movie I just finished in New Mexico is called Tow, T-O-W, and I play a character that drives a tow truck and tows people against their will and locks them in their cars and does horrible things to them. So that is standard role for me. But also this year, I did a movie called 13 Fanboy. And it's interesting because it's a guy that's obsessed with the Friday the 13th movies and kind of becomes a psycho and kind of kills people, and I play myself in it. Where it's kind of interesting that I end up in an altercation with this guy, and he injures me badly enough to where I may or may not be dying, and I am all of my scenes are with an actress named Jennifer Banco, and she played young Tina in Friday the 13th Part 7 in flashbacks. So she was just a little girl then. So my scene where I'm dying, laying in her arms, very emotional, and it was very cool that the director wanted me to do that. And then I said, once I got the scene finished, I asked the director, can we do one more take and let me just kind of go? And you'll know when to cut when I close my eyes. So she let me just go off and talk about stuff that was personal to my real life, like my dad, and doing very emotional stuff, talking about the fact that my dad never got to see that I made the right choice in my career. I dropped out of college, did not get my degree, which is his dream, to have me get a degree. Went into something that is very hard to succeed in, stunts or acting or anything. And he died before I became successful. So, in that scene, I talked about all that stuff, and I was just crying like crazy talking about it. And then I closed my eyes, and the director cut. And I looked, and there were 2 male crew members crying. So that was pretty cool to know that you could have that kind of impact on somebody that does this for a living. It was the boom operator and one of the PAs, and the fact that these are people that are on sets all the time, and you were able to make them cry. That's kind of cool. So, not sure if the final movie will have that version of that scene in it, or if that is maybe too much for that particular time in the film, but it was really nice to be able to do something like that. I'd like to have the scene for my own reel, if nothing else.
That sounds amazing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, you make us cry and then you scare the heck out of us. You're a legend, Kane Hodder.
I'll make you
Absolute
cry
legend.
while I'm scaring you. Well, I've also been doing some comedy, though, too. So, I don't know if you ever saw An Accidental Zombie Named Ted. I think I'm pretty funny in that one. And that, I got to tell you, doing comedy is a lot of fun. I mean, I like killing people very much. But making people laugh also is fun. Which one? Oh, yeah, that's right. Villa Toro from Fear Clinic. Yeah, I thought I was set to do the movie, and suddenly I wasn't, so I don't know what happened. I was too.
Out of every Friday the 13th that you've been in, which one was your favorite to act on set with, the other people?
Well, I mean, I always say my favorite one is part 7 of the Fridays that I did. But I love doing all of them. I mean, come on, you know, you have to put yourself in my position, especially the first time I played the character. This is a character that's had 6 movies already before I ever showed up. Widely known around the world is that name, Jason. And just imagine now you're the person that's going to play that character. Out of all the people in the world, it's you that's going to play that character now. So huge honor. I still think it was. And, you know, I never expected to continue. Like I said before, I never thought I'd go past 7. And each time that I was asked to do it again, I was happy and, you know, a little surprised. The only time I wasn't surprised, or that I was surprised in a bad way, is when I was told I was doing Freddy versus Jason. I was given the script at a lunch meeting with the executive from the studio. She said, "Here's the script, we're finally doing it." So to me, I assumed I was going to play the character. And then they hired a director that didn't want me, so, you know, it's just replaced. So that's the part of the business that my dad always worried about. It's a thankless business, man. It can be, where you devote your heart and soul into playing a character for 15 years, and then somebody just says, I'm going to use somebody else, and never bothers to even tell you why. I have still never been given a reason why I didn't play the character.
I think you would have been great in it.
I mean, it would have been fun. Even Robert used to say, I don't know if he still does, but he used to say he always pictured it as England versus Hodder. Not so much Freddy versus Jason, but, you know, more, because I was more known for the character. Obviously, he's known as Freddy, so it seemed to be the logical choice, but didn't happen, so.
Thank you, though.
But I think that it goes to show, like, that you have persevered and you still, you know, like, were able to be successful even not doing that film. So.
Yeah, and then Adam Green came along and gave me a new character that I could develop from the beginning. And I don't know how many of you have seen all the Hatchet movies, but what I tried to do with the Victor Crowley character was, in the first movie, we just are introduced to Victor, so I made him very, like, twitchy and not used to doing this stuff. Felt compelled to kill people, but really wasn't used to it. It was kind of a new thing, so I didn't want him to look too comfortable doing it. And over the course of the 4 films, I chose to make him a little more comfortable, to where by the time Victor Crowley comes along, he is just so used to killing everyone he can reach that, you know, he has evolved over the 4 films. And, you know, it's probably not evident to the viewing audience, but that's how I approached it.
All right. I was going to ask, Out of all the Friday the 13th movies you've played in, you've starred in, was there any kills that the producers or directors let you just gave an idea of yourself and the kill you wanted to do? They let you do it.
So a kill that wasn't written necessarily.
Yeah, like you designed it. You wanted
I never really came up with any original kills. I may have added to some to make them a little more interesting, but I was always kind of fortunate that the writers of each movie were creative enough to come up with some crazy stuff. But you know, for instance, it was written in Friday the 13th, Part 7, that I dragged the girl out of the tent in the sleeping bag and slam her against a tree.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, it might be more violent to continue slamming her, which I did. I think I slammed her 5 times. In the ultimate edit, it ended up only being 1, just like it was written, and I think that was actually a better choice because it had such an impact that boom, down and gone. So the directors I worked with always let me add my own flavor, at least to consider it. Whether it was always used or not, that's something else. But I never had to really come up with any of the kills on my own. I could, but I never had to.
All right, thank you.
One of my favorite movies of yours is Jason X, aka Jason in Space. If for no other reason than when you first hear the premise, you're like, this is not going to work, but it worked so well. Were there any moments when you were working as an actor where you read a scene in a script and you thought, this is not going to work, but then it ended up working phenomenally well for you?
Well, I mean, even when I first read the script, I thought, oh, come on, this is a little ridiculous. Jason in space, and I was a little concerned that people might laugh at it. But then I thought, well, I mean, Jason has been in a lot of different locations, and I've always just made him consistent. Doesn't matter what his surroundings are, I made him the same as always. So that's how I approach it. He may be on a spaceship, but he's still the same old Jason, going to kill everybody he can reach. And you know, and then when I saw the artist's rendering of what Uber Jason was going to look like, I thought, ooh, that's pretty amazing. And to this day, out of all the makeups and costumes and crazy creatures I have played, that Uber Jason was the one that freaked people out the most. Somehow the lenses that I wore as Uber Jason, they were red, but a weird red. People hated looking me in the eyes, even without the rest of the makeup on. So it was an effective costume, and I thought it looked cool as hell. And you know, I got to recreate the sleeping bag scene again. It was supposed to be beating one girl in the sleeping bag against her friend in the sleeping bag. And this is one of those cases where I did add a little bit to it. I told the camera operator, I said, I'm going to beat them together, but then I got to do one final shot to the tree for old time's sake. So the camera operator followed that, and you know, it ended up being in the movie.
Thank you.
Hey, Kane. My family has had a lot of fun watching you kill me and other people in the video game that was done a few years ago. My question, was that a good experience for you because you got to play every Jason? And as a little follow-on, one thing I really noticed, I watched a few of the behind-the-scenes things when you were doing the stunts, and I was very, very shocked and impressed with just how physical and angry and into it you got when you were killing those people. I legitimately was concerned for those stunt actors' well-being.
Well, they were stunt people, so that's why, yeah.
Yeah, so, but was that overall a good experience for you?
Oh, yeah, I mean, let's face it, motion capture for a video game is something that anyone could do. But in gun media's opinion, they thought the only person that should be doing the movements for Jason in the video game was me. So I was very flattered and happy that they were of that opinion. And so we started that process. And as you know, I think, from the very first motion capture session to the last one was a year and 10 months, almost 2 years, off and on doing the motion capture. And when you do, stunt type activity with motion capture, it's completely different, because when you do a fight scene, for instance, for a movie, you have to make all of the violence look good from one particular angle. Wherever the camera is, you have to make this smash to the face look like a hit from that angle. Now, with motion capture, there's 75 cameras simultaneously catching the action from every possible angle. So it's much harder to make things read like effective hits, for instance, from every possible angle. So it was a different way of working, and I think it's cool that every single male death in the video game, no matter who it is, besides Jason, every kill was performed by one stunt guy. And I think that's kind of cool for him to be able to say, yep, everybody that gets killed in that game is me. Because he did every single session that we did. I had to use 2 different stunt girls for the female victims because one was not available all the time. But the guy made himself available so he could do that. And when you speak about the fact that you can play as any Jason, I found that challenging, because I've always said that none of the movies I did where I played Jason, I thought Jason should run. Just didn't fit the character, in my opinion. But now I was presented with the challenge that, wait a second, you're going to be able to play as Part 3 Jason in this game, and as Part 4 Jason. I know Part 3 Jason ran, and I think Part 4 also did.
It was 2 and 3, I think.
2 and 3?
Yeah.
So I was going against my normal instincts when I had to do some running shots, because it felt weird. Even though I didn't look like Jason, I had to run knowing I was Jason. And you probably heard me say it before, or I may have told you that I didn't know they had the technology where I could stand on the motion capture stage in spandex, which is pretty scary anyway, with sensors all over me, and I could look at a monitor like this screen right here, and I was instantly animated already as Part 7 Jason. So whatever movements I did in the spandex, I could watch how it looked already animated. I still find that pretty amazing that they could instantaneously animate me. Maybe that's a standard thing, but I didn't know you could do it. Because I did motion capture for a video game 20 years ago or 15 years ago. One day of motion capture for a game that was supposed to be called Summer Camp. And I assumed they were trying to, capitalize on the Jason idea, and then it never became a game. But so I had a little experience from that, and it was just fun. Some days I would do 50 different kills. There's so much content that has not made it into the game, and it's based on that lawsuit between the 2 people. And I think that we'll never see it now. So much more content that we've rendered and that's ready to be put in there, but because of the lawsuit, it probably never will be. But.
Well, thank you. That company had a Kentucky connection too, if I'm not mistaken, Gun, right?
Oh, absolutely. The Gun Media that built this whole game is based in Lexington. And so I've always had a long time connection with Lexington anyway, Scarefest and stuff, so. Yeah.
All right, so we have 5 minutes left, so these 2 final questions.
What got you started in the Jason?
John Beekler, really. A lot of you probably heard the story, but I did a movie called Prison that Rennie Harlan directed. It was his first American film as a director. Viggo Mortensen was in it, and I was a stunt coordinator and doing most of the stunts myself up in Wyoming. And Rennie, toward the end, he and John Beekler said, look, we have to have an actor in a makeup that's full body makeup, lenses, dentures, facial prosthetics, body suit, and it's only going to be used in a short time in the movie. And I said, I'll do it. So John Beekler ended up liking how I worked in that circumstance with the makeup, because it's very difficult to perform in that type of situation. He liked how I did it and thought it was unique. And the following year was hired to direct Friday the 13th, Part 7, and immediately said, I want this guy to play Jason. And they're like, well, who is he? And he said, doesn't matter. You don't know him, but he'll work well in the makeup, because Part 7 makeup was the same thing. Facial prosthetics, dentures, lenses, and a whole bodysuit. And plus, Jason had to do a lot of stunts, which had never happened and never has happened since, that many stunts happened to Jason. It's normally him causing things to happen to other people. But since she had the telekinetic powers, she made all kinds of things happen, including being on fire and all that. So I did all those stunts, and Beekler knew that it makes more sense for consistency of the character to have the same person play it throughout. Because you have in a makeup like that, you have an actor doing some scenes and a stunt person doing some scenes. It's never going to look the same. It won't look consistent, because they both have different movements. So Beekler fought for me and eventually convinced them that I should do it. And then I always say, based on that performance, then the next 3 directors thought they'd stick with me. So that's how it happened.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, the final question.
So you've probably had this one before, but outside of the Friday the 13th franchise, is there like a, excuse me, a slasher icon or like maybe a monster that you wish you could have played?
Oh, yeah. Yes. So, I did a lot of scenes as Leatherface, because I stunt doubled R.A. Mihailoff in Chainsaw 3. So I did a lot of scenes. I did the Jason thing. Did one shot as Freddy with the glove coming out of the ground and Jason goes to hell grabbing the mask. That was me. So the one character that I've always loved, and I know a lot of people agree with me, I always thought it would be cool to play Michael Myers. And it's a great character from a great franchise, and some of the guys that have played the character have done very well. Some of them I didn't think were as convincing, but that would be a character that I'll always kind of wish I had the chance to play.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so before we wrap this up, any final thoughts?
Well, final thoughts. I didn't expect the reception to me at this convention to be as good as it has been, so thank you guys for being a fan of what I do, because this is not necessarily a horror-themed event at all, so I appreciate the warm reception I've gotten, and I'm happy to be here, and thank you guys.